People have been asking me about how I set up Hermes to do my apartment scouting. So this is a deep dive of how I've set that up. Every morning around 8 o'clock in the morning, I get an email and it looks exactly like this. This is an email that was sent out by my agent, Jackie Jones, and it has looked through a whole bunch of listings, all of the ones that have been posted in the previous day. It finds all of the matching ones. It looks at Zillow, Trilia, Craigslist. It looks at a bunch of other places too. It filters out the best ones and produces this very detailed report of all of the places with the pros and cons, and it's super easy to skim. You can quickly see what's the location, how far is it from my office. So this is super customized to me. This is how far it is from the office that I work in Santa Monica. It has information if it's a condo, a townhouse, or a full house. It has information about the square footage, the bedrooms. All of the listings have the same format, as well as some of the qualities about it, detail about the school district, because I also want to make sure that the place that we're looking at has a good school district for my daughter to go to school. What you're looking at here is the third iteration on this project. I've done it about 3 different ways, scrapping it and coming up with new things specifically about how to source the best apartments. But let me zoom out and I'll show you exactly how it's working now and then talk about some of the pitfalls that I ran into so you don't have to. I just asked my Hermes agent, Jackie Jones, to send me information about the criteria that we use to filter and source these different apartments. So here it shows you the type of stuff that it's looking at in the background every time that it runs it. I think one of the big ones that it comes up with is the geography and commute targets. So all of the source listings have an address, and what is happening in the background is that address ends up getting geolocated, and the distance, the driving distance between my office and that particular rental is calculated and included inside there. There's information about filtering on budgets and things that are fairly common, different information about qualitative preferences that sometimes I like some things, but it's not a deal breaker. The way that it actually works is there's this rubric that we set up in the background where there's a certain amount of points that get scored for each of these different quality things, and ultimately if a listing hits like a 90, it becomes like an extremely positive one that's like top of the list. Things like around 70 have a lot of good qualities, but they're still on the lower end of what Jackie Jones will show me. Sometimes like the school zone, they don't know exactly what school zone it's in, so they have different levels of confidence that they'll show, but there's a lot of different best practices that they use as well as trying to keep things as fresh as possible to make sure that things work well, as well as the idea that some photos can lie. And that's another thing that is really effective about this particular agent is the photos that come through. It's able to actually look at the photos and determine, does it look like there's a lot of light? Does it look like it's a dark place? Does the place look modern interior, or does it not look like that? These are all things that the agent is doing in the background to make sure that it's only giving me the most interesting places to look at. So this is how it's filtering and qualifying the different places that it finds. But a big piece of this is how do we actually build that data set of the listings that are coming in order to run this model against, in order to produce that email that ultimately gets sent. So I tried a few different ways. Originally, I suggested that we start with Zillow and we start just scraping it like a normal website, but the amount of CAPTCHAs and bot protection and all of that made that process be extremely ineffective. The other approach that I tried was using some other websites and globbing them together. So things like apartments.com, as well as a few others, as well as using things like web searches to cast a wide net in order to see everything that's available. And when I started using the web searches, I started getting some pretty good results and everything looked good on paper. The challenge with that was when I started reaching out to the realtors, a lot of times the good places actually were already booked by that time because the data that I was getting was maybe 3 days stale, something like that. So that's when I learned that the freshness of this data is actually really, really important. I looked at a few different options. Hermes told me about things if I wanted to really go deep down that scraping path. There's APIify, which would cost maybe between 50 cents and a couple dollars every day. There's this autonomy, there's Scraper API. There's a lot of different things, but ultimately what I found to be the most effective was just setting up these email alerts and having these emails go out to an inbox that I monitor, and then just using that as the basis of it. So no scraping at all, just listening to emails that come through. Before I started this, I already set up a Gmail account for Jackie Jones. So she has that email account that she can use for stuff like this. And ultimately what I ended up doing is I just signed that up on Zillow, Trillia, and those websites. And if you actually just visit those websites, there's just the ability to search for a place. You can draw a polygon of the type of places that you were considering looking at. Then you can save the search, and you can see that I actually saved a handful of different searches to see different areas. But ultimately what you can do is you can subscribe to them, and then you have different options about how often they actually get sent. So I set it up to have email notifications that go out instantly. So these just constantly are sending emails. As soon as one comes out, I end up getting an email, and it just comes into this inbox. And you can see that every day, like today, I ended up getting 5 emails about these rentals. And many of them have 9 listings, 4 listings, 5 listings. A lot of them, on the 9th, there was maybe 8 emails that came through. So a lot of these different messages that are coming out, but ultimately this is an inbox that I'm not really looking at, but instead my agent just looks at once a day as it's about to qualify all these places, and ultimately that's what it uses to score against this model that we've built to classify them. And this is the same email address that's actually being used to send me the emails. I set up this agent to use this Gmail account using the Himalaya CLI tool, and using that, it just sends it like a normal email. It doesn't use anything fancy, and that just goes to my actual inbox. I have marked Jackie Jones as somebody who is a priority sender. So basically, as soon as she comes through my inbox, she gets flagged on Gmail as one of the top priority things to look at, because it's always good stuff that she's sending. So that's how I have it all set up, and basically how this email is sent out to me every day in order to just give me only the best prioritized things, and it gives it to me on a schedule that I can count on. This here is one specific workflow that I've set up for the apartment rental scouting. But this pattern of using Hermes to scout around and give you high quality things is one of the ones that I use all the time. So the concept is that you use Hermes to find across many different sources. You give it a rubric of exactly what you're looking for and how to rank things. And then after that, you can have it run on a periodic schedule and give you just this high quality listing where you have a single centralized report that gives you everything that you need to do, instead of having to look around in a lot of different places or be reactive or just kind of hope that you get lucky and notice things. You can use this scouting pattern to basically continually get this list of data, and then you can manually act upon this stuff, or you can set up a different workflow and chain it together. But ultimately, for me, this is an example of the 97% of the work getting automated, because it would take me so long to be swiping through Zillow and looking at all these places. But all of a sudden, if Hermes is doing all the work of filtering out all these things that don't actually matter, now, with 5 minutes, I can just look at all the high quality ones, and I don't have to waste my time with all of these other ones. And ultimately, things like messaging back and forth with these realtors, scheduling things, emailing things, having phone calls, these are things that don't take the same amount of tedious time. So rather than having my time spent figuring out how do I automate away this entire process and then getting really caught up in all of this minutia, instead I just focus on getting all the information that I can and then handing it over to me in order to take action on manually. And that's absolutely fine by me. I use this pattern for things like a weekly industry update, where it'll look around the internet for all the conversations that are happening in my industry that are more heated arguments between people and well upvoted things and things of that nature, and scouts around to find these high quality threads and gives me an update. So I on a consistent basis get that. And I've heard of this pattern being used for a lot of things like job searching and things of that nature. So there's a million different ways that you can apply this principle to your projects, where you can have Hermes do the grunt work, but then you take this report and you act upon it as the executive. This is part 2 of Hermes in the real world, where I dive into these specific use cases, where I talk about how I'm using Hermes on a daily basis to just improve my life. Part 1 was recently released. It talks about this workflow where I take messy ideas with dictation. So I use an app on my phone, I talk into my phone, and I end up getting some really good ideas and good documents created. So that's part 1. If you haven't seen that, I really encourage you to go back and check that one out, as well as if you liked this video, give it a like and subscribe to the channel. That helps the algorithm know who is interested, who isn't interested, and it helps push my content so the people that are excited about Hermes and automation and all this stuff get to see it. For part 3 and beyond, I have a couple of really cool ideas I'm excited about, things about how to remix the same content into different mediums so everything is customized for those channels. So I'm excited about that, as well as a few other topics about things like specific skills, like the last 30 days skill, and a few others as well. So yeah, hit that subscribe button if that sounds interesting to you, and you can be sure to be notified when these end up coming out.